What's good, everybody? Just hope you guys are having fun. Welcome back to the video. So took a break last week because I didn't have a voice. Slowly getting better. Almost, it's getting there. But I just figured I'd go over week 5 real quick, and then we'll go over week 6. So you get a 2-for-1 special today. Um, so last week, just gonna go over quickly because stuff has changed. Big Papa defeated Birds of Pies 107.87 to 103.53. Ricky Bobby teed off on Hertz for 184.3 to 125.53. Game over for you. Won 158.64 to 128.61. America defeated Unfinished Business 125 to 1.8 to 111.97. Garrett and the Jets defeated Gritty Fly 140.83 to 129.53, and Hawk Pockets wins 105.77 to 98.72. All right, go over the little weekly report here. Looks like best scoring team belonged to Ricky Bobby here with 184.30. Worst scoring team was Saquon with 98.65 or 68. Players the starters of the week. You got Joe Burrow had 42.78 for the quarterback, led all quarterbacks. For running backs, DeAndre Swift led with 20 points here. Jamar Chase led all receivers with 42.30. Brock Bowers led all tight ends with 23.70. Fairbairn led all kickers with 16 points. And the Broncos defense led all defenses with 18.42. Bench warmers for the week. Baker Mayfield had 28.4 points. Tank Bixby had 26.9. DJ Moore went out for 28.5. Tyler Kraft went out for 24.80. And the 49ers defense went out for 13.38. Awards here. Looks like, from what I'm seeing here, looks like Witch Nasty picked up as the most efficient manager here with 128.57 points. Basically 100% accuracy here. Least efficient manager belongs to Birds of Pies with 103.63. Their highest points of loss goes to Gritty Fly. The loss to Garrett Jets, where he had 129.53 points. Lowest points of the win belongs to Matty Ice in his win over Saquon when he had 105.73. Kyle picked up a Ricky Bobby picked up a couple awards here for biggest blowout and overachiever. He had 184.30 in the blowout win over Hertz, and outscored his projection basically by 70 points. And then for looks like Big Papa picked up some couple of awards as well, with a narrow victory and the underachiever. He had 107.87 points for both. And then here the performance shows, like I said, shows the top scoring team all the way down to the bottom. Gold represents how much they scored, and the gray, silver, whatever you want to call it, is the maximum amount of points they could have gotten. Now, skip it to the power rankings here. This is the power rankings for last week. I took all the wins, losses, took all the points scored, points allowed, put it all into a formula, and then spit out a score. So going into week 6, we had Game Over for You leading the charge with 1.34 points. Didn't move anything. Ricky Bobby had a big increase, up 6 spots to 1.11, and a narrow and just ahead of America with 1.11 as well. Excuse me. And he moved up a couple spots as well. Garrett and the Jets also had 1.11, but had a 1.1094, basically a 0.9 plus 2 here. Birds of Bides also had 1.11 with a 1.1091. He fell down a few spots. Big Papa finished at 1.10, but he tied with Saquon. Big Papa had 1.104. Saquon at 1.095. Big Papa went up 1. and Saquon went down 4. Hurts also dropped 4 spots to 1.07, and Hawk Pocket's still at 9 with 0.90, which Nasty didn't move anywhere there with 0.69. Gritty Fly finished with 0.68, and Unfinished Business finished with 0.67. Right. And we just finished week 6 in the books here. Just gonna go over the details for this one. Gritty Fly beats Big Papa 117.09 to 65.24. Going over the lineups here. Prescott finished with only 1.22. Detroit shut him down, couldn't really do anything. James Conner kind of was scripted out of the game here with the blowout loss to Green Bay here, but he finished with 7.6 points. Trey Sermon had a tough defense, facing against a tough defense, only finished with 2.9 points, couldn't do anything on the run. Olave got hurt during the game, get that concussion, so hopefully he'll be okay. I doubt. I mean, this is my guess. Is I doubt he would play this week. I think they'd rest him up, just to take a safe approach here. Jayden Reed also got hurt, but came back in. Finished with 6 receptions, 20 yards, touchdown for 14.8. Pratt Freiermuth didn't do much in this one with 3.6. Slayton came in for 11.7 points. Washington's kicker here finished with 14. Seibert finished with 14. Missed a 1 field goal that would have had I think a 40-something yard or 2. So actually a 50-something, so he could have finished with 20. Then Buffalo's defense finished with 8.92 points. And then going up to Gritty Fly here, Herbert finished with 12.68. Kenneth Walker didn't do very good on the ground, but he caught a lot of balls in the receiving game. Finished with 20.90 points. Swift has been on fire. 91 yards, a touchdown, 4 for 28. Finished with 21.90 points. Brandon Ayuk only 5.7. Higgins was 7 for 77 with the 14.7 points. Zach Ertz 4 for 68, 10.8 points. Lockett, he had 4 for 65 with a touchdown for 16.5 points. McPherson had a field goal for 30, a couple extra points for 5 points. Chargers defense at 8.91 points. Rich Nasty defeated, in this one, Rich Nasty defeated Ricky Bobby 147.33 to 141.52 in a high scoring affair. For Ricky Bobby, Joe Burrow had 15.82 points. Javonte Williams only 5.6. Tracy started for Singletary, had himself a pretty good game. 17 for 50 and a touchdown, 6 for 57 there. And then with excuse me here, with Nico Collins being out, you expected Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs to step up. Tank Dell did. 7 for 57 and a touchdown for 18.7. Drake London had 6 for 74 and a touchdown against Carolina. You attack them. Always attack Carolina's defense. Got 19.4 fantasy points. Brock Bowers had 9 for 71. Devontae Adams being out, he was the main target guy, basically. And also, Jacoby Myers was out, too. So, not really many people to throw to. I thought Tucker would have did something that game, but he didn't. So, which is kind of interesting. So, but he had 16.1. Scary Terry with 23.3 fantasy points, 6 for 53 and 2 touchdowns. Younghoe Koo had 12 points. And then Denver's defense had 7.9. And then for Witch Nasty, Caleb Williams had 34.64 points. He went off 226, 4 touchdowns, interception, but he did run for 56 yards on top of that. Mixon picked up right where he left off. 102 yards, a touchdown, 2 receptions for 30 yards, and a touchdown as well for 28.2. Chuba Hubbard Uh, 92 yards rushing, but 5 for 11 on receiving end for 15.3 points. CeeDee Lamb, even though they got blown out, he still finished 7 for 89, 16.10 fantasy points. Ladd McConkey, 4 for 43 for 8 fantasy points. Dalton Schultz, 4 for 27 with 6.7. Algier, because they had a big lead, they started putting him in a lot more. He still did pretty good, 105 yards and a touchdown, 2-point conversion, reception for 3 yards. Aubrey still, Aubrey, I'm pretty sure, has like half their points for the Cowboys right now. But he finished with 12 fantasy points. And Washington's defense for 5.29. And then this one here, Hurts picks up the win. It gets game over for you, 139.91 to 127.45. Lamar Jackson, for a game for you. Lamar Jackson finished with 20.92 fantasy points here, 323 yards, touchdown, and reception. 40 yards rushing, 2 on top of that. Breece Hall and the new offense. See how things change. He finished with 113 yards rushing and 5 for 56 when it comes to with the 22.9 fantasy points. Anyway, so Travis Etienne kind of was scripted out of the game. Tank Bigsby had himself a game. Couldn't remember if he got hurt or not. I'm pretty sure he did. Brian Thomas, 3 for 27 for 5.7 fantasy points. Mike Evans, 2.2 for 34, which is 5.4. Usually against the Saints, he doesn't usually do the greatest, especially with the Marshawn Lattimore is on him too. So, but George Kittle had himself a game, 558, 2 touchdowns for 22.8 fantasy points. Najee Harris did pretty well in this game. They ran the ball a lot, 106 yards, touchdown, 2 receptions for 16 yards for 21.20 fantasy points. Boswell here had 17 points, hit 4 field goals that game, nailed one for 40 plus, 50 plus, and a couple extra points here. So, and a couple for 30. So, and then Chicago's defense here had 11.63 fantasy points. Meanwhile, for Hurts, the quarterback, had 24.86 fantasy points, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns at 33 yards rushing as well. Derrick Henry, all he did was run all over them, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns for 26.20 fantasy points. Montgomery, again, is going to basically get a touchdown every week. He had 80 yards, 2 touchdowns this game, and 1 reception for 0 yards. So for 21 points. Chase went 5 for 72 for 12 fantasy points. Diggs stepped up 2 with 6 for 77 and a touchdown for 19.7 fantasy points. The Njoku's back 5 for 31, 8 fantasy points there. Pickens only 3 for 53 for 8 fantasy points there. Elliott's picked out, thrown in for 9 fantasy points here, missed the 1 field goal. And then the Eagles defense here with 10.55 fantasy points. Unfinished business, took the W here against Saquon here for 141.50 to 130.83. Jordan Love teed off for 34.62 fantasy points, 258 yards, 4 touchdowns. Had the 1 interception, but he had 13 yards rushing attached too. Chase Brown, 53 yards, had that big touchdown in the 4th quarter, 2 for 11 yards rushing as well for 14.4 fantasy points. Cook was in this spot, but Cook ended up being scratched for this game, and Davis was already picked, so he picked up Johnson here. Johnson finished with 3.4 fantasy points. St. Brown had 4 for 37 and a touchdown for 13.7 fantasy points. Deebo Samuel had 3 for 102 and a touchdown. He also had a 15 yards rushing here too. Ingram, welcome back. 10 receptions, 102 yards. He did fumble once, but still finished with 2020. Basically, it's 2020 vision here. Deontay Johnson, 6 for 78, a touchdown. As long as Andy Dalton's the quarterback, Johnson's going off. Myers only had 6 fantasy points at the field goal for 3 points and 3 extra points here. And then Atlanta's defense for 7.68. Meanwhile, for Saquon, Stroud had 23.38 fantasy points, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns, ain't bad either. Had 7 yards rushing. Saquon Barkley, it's 47 yards and then 2 receptions for 7 yards for 7.4 fantasy points. I think that'll change this week just because they're facing the Giants, so I would think they're going to be doing whatever they can to just give him the ball and basically teeing off on his own team. Jacobs, 62 yards rushing, 3 for 28. I actually thought he would get more in this game just because Arizona is pretty bad against the run. But even with the blowout in a factor too. Devontae Smith is back, 3 for 64 to touchdown for 50.4 fantasy points. Chris Godwin's a stud, 11 for 125, 2 touchdowns, 36.5 fantasy points. Goddard got hurt during the game. Fortunately, hopefully everything's fine. I got him in a fantasy team, I got him on my fantasy team in the different league here. So, but hopefully everything's smooth here. Bucky Irving got the start here for the Bucks. Had 81 yards rushing and touchdown, 2 for 24 in the receiving game, for 18.5 fantasy points. Iverson had 10 fantasy points. He had 2 for 3 for the field goals and hit all 4 of his extra points. And then Baltimore's defense had 7.65 fantasy points. And then for Garen and the Jets, blowout fashion here, 166.32 win over Roberto Baez, who had 78.41. Kyler Murray finished with 14.96 points, 214 yards, a touchdown, and 14 yards rushing. Also had the 1 fumble. Gibbs had 63 yards rushing and then 3 for 28 in the receiving aspect for 12.1 fantasy points. Zach Moss only had 13 yards rushing, a reception for 2 yards. He did have the 1 fumble for 1.5 fantasy points. Excuse me. And then Marvin Harrison got hurt that game too, so he didn't see much action at all. DJ Moore only had 4.20 or 4 receptions for 20 yards or 6 fantasy points. Jacksonville didn't stop him as much, but then they gave up touchdowns to Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet. Kyle Pitts, 3 for 70 yards, had a couple big plays for 10 fantasy points. JSN, that 10 fantasy points, 5 for 53. Fairbairn had 2 or 3 of the field goals for 11 fantasy points. And then Pittsburgh's defense at 12.55 fantasy points. And then for Garen and the Jets, Josh Allen, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, had the 18 yards rushing, including the 1 touchdown as well. Mason got hurt for 7. He had 73 yards, 1 reception for 99 yards. Would have had more, but of course that injury. Pollard's pretty good. The game script was basically neutral, so we still use it. I don't know if that's going to happen this week though, but they may have to call an audible on that, but we'll see. 17.8 fantasy points there. And then AJ Brown, 6 for 116, the touchdown. He's finally back. 24.60. Garrett Wilson had himself a game. 8 for 107, and a touchdown for 25.70 fantasy points. And of course, I'm sure you guys heard about the trade for Davante Adams to the Jets here. Of course, Garrett Wilson's thing is going to go down a bit. Same with Lazard. But I'm sure they're going to try to pass the ball a lot more. I mean, that's what you hope for anyway. But, I mean, there's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, especially with Breece Hall back there. Trey McBride picked up some more targets, extra targets, 8 for 96. He had 17.6 fantasy points. Flowers started off hot and cooled down towards the end, but 9 for 132 going off that game for 23.4 fantasy points. McLaughlin here had 9 fantasy points, had a chip shot field goal, and then 6 extra points basically. And then Houston's defense with 12.62 fantasy points. And last matchup of the evening, Hawk Pockets defeats America 101.84 to 71.02. For America, Kirk Cousins had 14.5 fantasy points. Zeke only had 17 yards rushing for 1.7. Kamara, 40 yards on the rushing. Held him to 3 yards of carry, basically, but he did score the touchdown and got a lot of receptions out the backfield, 5 for 24 here for 17 fantasy points. Mooney had 3 for 38. Missed a couple catches that it could have had. 6.8 fantasy points. Cooper. Cooper had 4 for 42, 8.2 fantasy points. And then he got traded as well today. Excuse me here. All right, so just double check here. Yeah, with the Bills. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure, got to be sure. But the Bills finally get their receiver, which means Shakir's value is going to go down a little bit. But I'm sure Josh Allen will take full advantage of that. I like Cooper, man. He's quiet. He doesn't say much, but he goes out and does his job, basically. So, and then Ferguson here, the offense couldn't get it going for Dallas, but he had 3 receptions for 11 yards, 4 fantasy points. Ridley, 8 targets, didn't catch a single ball. That's unfortunate. He did get 1 carry for 9 yards, but 0.90. I'm sure he'll bounce back here. And then Tucker, 13 fantasy points here. Hit all of his field goals, hit all of his extra points in the win over Washington. Dallas only had 4.42 fantasy points here. Then for Hawk Pockets, Jaden Daniels, 21.96 fantasy points. He had 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 22 yards rushing too. Got sacked a few times. Bijan Robinson, again, attacked Carolina. He had 95 yards rushing on 15 carries, which is massive yards per carry there. Basically like six yards a carry, a little over. And then 2 touchdowns. He had 3 receptions for 10 yards for 25.5 fantasy points. Warren didn't have a great game. 6 carries for 7 yards. The only 3, he did get a few receptions for 11 yards here out the backfield, 4.8. Metcalf had 11 targets, but they covered him up pretty good. 3 for 48, 7.8 fantasy points. Judy should see an uptake in targets. He had 1 reception, that big 35-yarder over the middle. 4.5 fantasy points. Excuse me here. But he should take an uptick in targets. Dalton Kincaid, 6 for 51 here, 11 fantasy points. Tucker, thought Tucker would have gotten a little more since he was basically the guy now. Even against a tough defense there, they would have. I still thought he would have gotten more out of that. Wrights for San Francisco, taking over Moody, who hurt his hamstring last week. I believe his hamstring last week. But finished with 13 fantasy points here. And then Cleveland's defense had 13.18 fantasy points here. Okay, week number 6 here's weekly report. The best scoring team was Gary and the Jets with 166.32, and the worst scoring team was Big Papa with 65.24. The best starters, or the starters of the week, best QB was Caleb Williams with 34.64 points. Joe Mixon led our running backs, 28.2 points. Chris Godwin led all starting receivers with 36.50 points. George Kittle led all starting tight ends with 20.80 points. Boswell led all kickers with 17 points. And then for defense, it was the Browns leading the way with 13.18 points. And then for the bench warmers of the week, Baker Mayfield led all quarterbacks with 36.9 points. J.K. Dobbins had 18.20 points, leading all bench running backs. Lazard led all bench receivers with 24.40 points. Cole Kmet had 24 points to lead all bench tight ends. And let's see here. Butker had 0 points, and then the 49ers defense had 8.92 points. For awards, we have Skull for Life with the most efficient manager for this week with 141.50 points. We had Big Papa taking the least efficient and underachiever in this with 65.24 points. Highest points in loss goes to Ricky Bobby with 141.52 points in his loss to Witch Nasty, which we'll get to later. Hawk Pockets had the lowest points in the win with 101.84. Biggest blowout goes to Garrett and Jets with 166.32 points. Over Birds of Bides 78, so about a 80-point blowout there. And then Witch Nasty takes the other two here with a narrow victory and overachiever with 147.33 points. And then for performance here, as you can see right here, goes by the highest scoring team, goes all the way down to the lowest scoring. The gold represents the points you scored that week, and the silver, gray, whatever you want to call it, represents the maximum amount of points you could have gotten for that week. So you can pause the video if you like and go ahead and take a look at the scores. Okay, just a quick look at the standings. We got Game Over For You leading with 4-2, followed by Ricky Bobby at 3-3, and Unfinished Business at 2-4. Then we got Matty Ice and Hawk Pockets and Bird Abides for at 3-3, and Gritty Fly at 2-4 right behind. The next division here, we got Saquon and Amarika both at 3-3, followed by Witch Nasty at 2-4. Got Garrett and the Jets and Hertz both at 4-2, followed by Big Papa at 3-3. Now I take all this, take all the records here, like all the games, records, points for, points allowed, put them all into a little formula, and it spits out a power ranking score. So here are your power rankings for this week. Okay, week 7 power rankings. A lot of stuff has changed here. We got Garrett and Jets now lead the way at number 1 with a 1.21 score, jumping up 3 spots from 4 to 1. We got Game Over For You in second at 1.20. That's moving 1 spot down. Hertz had a jump for 1 point, or he's up to 1.15, which puts him up 5 spots. Hawk Pockets also jumped up 5 spots at 1.01, tied with Ricky Bobby at 1.01. But Hawk Pockets has a score higher by 0.001. Marika is next at 1, dropping down 3 spots. Saquon is at 0.99 with 0.992, not going anywhere. Big Papa dropped down a couple spots to 0.99, but his score is a 985. Rita Bites dropped down 4 spots to 0.98. And then Gritty Fly jumps up a spot from 11 to 10 at 0.83, which Nasty behind him, 0.82, drops a spot in Unfinished Business, rounds out at 0.81. Okay, let's take a look at the matchups here for week number 7. We got Hawk Pockets taking on Big Papa. We got Ricky Bobby against Amarika. Got Game Over For You against Saquon. We got Unfinished Business taking on Garrett and Jets. Gritty Fly taking on Hertz. Birds Abides taking on Witch Nasty here. If I had to pick a game of the week, I would pick Ricky Bobby taking on America here. I think just a lot of stuff is going to be changing. Taylor, they should be getting their full strength, I would say. Should be a high-scoring game. Of course, everything will be adjusted here when the buys come in and all that. So, or when the uh, waiver wires go down. So, well, that's all I got for you today. For my guys, good luck. May the odds ever be in your favor. For everyone else, hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk to you soon.